Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk English. I'm James.
And I'm Emma. We're here to help you improve your English.
Let's get started.
You know, the world is full of traditions, and some of them are definitely more, shall we say, unique than others.
Absolutely.
Your research on unusual customs is fascinating, and I'm excited to dive into some of these with you.
Yeah.
From the food we eat to how we say goodbye to loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a deep dive into these cultural curiosities, shall we?
It's a great reminder that what might seem strange or even bizarre to one culture is often perfectly normal and meaningful to another.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about perspective, isn't it?
Perspective is key. Speaking of which, you've got some interesting food-related traditions in this research.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, some of them have me wondering, do people really eat that?
Well, food is such a central part of any culture. It's not just sustenance. It's deeply tied to tradition, identity, and even our environment.
Okay, that makes sense. So tell me more about this whole eating insects thing.
Okay.
I read about fried tarantulas in Venezuela, and I'm not going to lie, that one made my stomach churn a bit.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
It's definitely not your average burger and fries, but in many cultures, particularly in parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, insects are a regular part of the diet.
Seriously?
Right.
Like, what kind of insects are we talking about here, and why eat them in the first place?
Well, think about it this way. Insects are actually a highly sustainable and incredibly nutritious food source. They're packed with protein, vitamins, and minerals, and raising them has a much smaller environmental footprint compared to traditional livestock.
So it's like eco-friendly eating, but with an extra set of legs.
Exactly. And it's not just about the environmental benefits. In many cultures, insects are considered a delicacy. Take those fried tarantulas you mentioned. They're seen as a special treat in Venezuela.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
But I have to ask, what do they taste like?
Descriptions vary, but some say tarantulas have a slightly nutty flavor, kind of like crab or soft-shell crab. It's really about challenging our preconceived notions of what food is.
Okay, I'm all for trying new things, but maybe I'll start with something a little less intimidating. What about fermented foods? Kimchi, sauerkraut, those are pretty mainstream now, right?
Absolutely. Fermented foods are a great example of how cultural preferences evolve. What was once considered weird can become totally normal, even trendy.
It's true. I remember when sushi wasn't exactly a household name. Now it's everywhere. So what's the deal with fermentation? Why has it become so popular?
Well, for centuries, cultures around the world have used fermentation as a way to preserve food. Think about the tangy kick of kimchi in Korea, practically a national treasure. Or sauerkraut in Germany, a classic pairing with sausages and a good dose of history. And let's not forget about yogurt, cheese, and even bread, all products of fermentation.
Wow, when you put it that way, fermented foods are everywhere. And I've heard they're really good for your gut too, right?
Exactly. Probiotics, which are found in fermented foods, are all the rage these days for a happy and healthy digestive system. So it's a fascinating blend of tradition, taste, and increasingly a focus on well-being.
It makes you wonder what today's weird foods will be considered common tomorrow. Maybe we'll all be snacking on crickets and mealworms before we know it. From food that's both intriguing and a little bit scary, let's move on to how different cultures celebrate. And believe me, we're not just talking about your average birthday party here.
Yeah, definitely not.
You've got some seriously wild celebrations in this research.
We do. Festivals and celebrations are really a window into the soul of a culture, you know.
Oh, okay.
They reveal what people value, what they fear, and how they connect with each other.
Okay, so let's start with a bang, literally. Tell me more about Burning Man. What's the story behind this festival in the Nevada desert?
Burning Man is fascinating because it's more than just a party. It's a temporary city built on principles of self-expression, community, and radical inclusion. People from all walks of life gather in the desert to create art, music, and a sense of community unlike anywhere else.
It sounds like a cross between a giant art installation and a massive campout.
Right.
And then there's the whole burning a giant effigy thing. Where does that come into play?
Right. So the burning of the man is symbolic of letting go of the past and embracing change. It's a powerful ritual that brings people together for a shared experience of catharsis and renewal.
Wow, that's pretty deep for a party in the desert.
Yeah.
It's interesting how Burning Man is all about embracing the new and unconventional, but then you have celebrations that are so deeply rooted in a culture's history and traditions.
Yeah.
Like the Highland Games in Scotland. Those have been going on for centuries, right?
Exactly. From the rugged landscape of the Scottish Highlands comes a celebration of strength, skill, and heritage. We're talking kilts, bagpipes, and some seriously intense athletic competitions.
Okay, like what? Give me the highlights.
Well, you've got your traditional Highland dancing, of course, always a crowd pleaser. But the real showstopper is the caber toss, where competitors heave massive wooden poles high into the air.
I've seen videos of that, and I still can't believe how they flip those things. Talk about a test of strength and technique.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It's amazing how both Burning Man and the Highland Games, although completely different in style, bring people together through shared experiences.
Absolutely. Whether it's through radical self-expression or celebrating ancestral traditions, these gatherings fulfill a basic human need for connection and belonging.
Well said. Now, from these grand celebrations, let's zoom in on a more intimate milestone: weddings.
Okay.
And let me tell you, some of these marital traditions had me both baffled and slightly terrified.
Oh, I bet. Wedding customs. Few rituals are as steeped in tradition, superstition, and, let's face it, a little bit of drama as those surrounding marriage.
Okay, for example, you've got carrying the bride over hot coals in China. That sounds intense, to say the least. What's the thinking behind that one?
Well, like many wedding customs, it's about symbolism and ensuring good luck for the couple. The act of carrying the bride over hot coals is believed to purify her and bring good fortune to the marriage.
So it's kind of like a fiery test of their commitment right from the get-go.
Exactly. And it's not just about luck. It's also seen as a way to ward off evil spirits. Many golfers believe that important life transitions, like marriage, make people vulnerable to negative energy, so rituals are performed to protect them.
That makes sense. And speaking of rituals, what about this Scottish custom of blackening of the bride? Flour, soot, eggs. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart, but behind the messiness lies a tradition of community support and preparation for the challenges of married life.
So it's like a pre-wedding hazing ritual disguised as a party.
In a way, yes. It's a way for friends and family to show their love and support while also acknowledging that marriage isn't always easy.
I guess a little bit of flour and soot never hurt anyone too badly. But it really highlights how these wedding customs, as strange as they may seem, often have deeper meanings rooted in cultural beliefs and values. So we've talked about food, we've talked about celebrations, but now let's talk about something a little bit, well, different. While weddings are full of hope and anticipation, you also sent some research about how different cultures approach death and saying goodbye.
It's interesting, right? Death is a universal experience. But the ways we grieve, commemorate, and even physically lay our loved ones to rest vary so widely across cultures.
When I think about that, I always think about those hanging coffins in the Philippines. Like, the visual of that is so striking. What's the story behind that tradition?
Yeah, you're talking about the Igorot people, an indigenous group in the Philippines, and they place the coffins high up on cliffs, suspended in the air.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's a breathtaking sight, but there's a lot more to it than just the visual.
Okay, so what's the cultural significance of placing the coffins like that?
They believe that by placing their departed loved ones closer to the sky, they're closer to the heavens and to their ancestors watching over them. It's a powerful expression of their spiritual beliefs and their connection to their ancestors.
It really makes you think about our own place within that whole cycle of life and death. And speaking of different perspectives on death, the Tibetan sky burial is something I've always found both fascinating and a little hard to wrap my head around.
It's a ritual that's deeply rooted in Tibetan Buddhism, their understanding of death and rebirth. The body after death is taken to a high mountaintop and ritually laid out as an offering.
An offering to what?
To nature, specifically to the vultures.
Wow.
They see these creatures as sky dancers that play a crucial role in releasing the spirit from the physical body, so it's a starkly beautiful ritual that speaks to the impermanence of the physical form and the continuation of the soul's journey.
So different from how many other cultures approach death, you know? It's about returning to the earth, but in a way, it's also about releasing the spirit to the heavens.
Exactly. These traditions really highlight how diverse human responses to mortality can be.
You know, when we look at all these traditions, from the food we eat to the way we celebrate, get married, and even say goodbye, it really makes you realize how much culture shapes our lives.
Yeah, and often in ways we don't even realize, right?
Right.
It's been really great exploring these fascinating traditions with you. From the seemingly bizarre to the deeply profound, each one offers a glimpse into the rich tapestry of human experience.
It makes you wonder what traditions we take for granted in our own lives that might seem equally fascinating, maybe even a little strange, to someone from a different culture.
That's a great question, and I hope our listeners will Think about that a little bit. Perhaps it will spark a new appreciation for the customs we hold dear, and maybe even a greater understanding of those that seem different from our own. After all, exploring the world's unusual customs isn't just about satisfying our curiosity, it's about broadening our perspectives and celebrating the incredible diversity of humanity.
For more awesome content, like, comment, and subscribe.